I'm actually going to do it for the dress, to be honest. There we go. Thanks. Are we all good to go? Well, it's wonderful to be here at Logan Hospital and with Minister Fentiman, member for Waterford, and Linus Power, member for Logan. And today we see the Logan Career Fair kick off. Significant interest in this fair. They've had over 1,500 people in the community registered to come along today, and I have no doubt others will come along as well. Why are we holding this Logan Careers Fair? Well, because of the investment of the Palaszczuk government here in Metro South Hospital and Health Service, and particularly here at Logan Hospital, where we are putting in over $1 billion of investment, we are going to need an extra 1,500 health workers this year and next year alone, just due to the completion of stage 1 of the works. That's 206 beds coming online over the next 24 months, and of course we'll have another 112 beds coming online between now and 2026. So with 318 new beds coming online between now and 2026, we're going to need not just doctors and nurses, but allied healthcare workers. We need people working in food services, environmental services, administration, security. All these jobs are available, and they're available now and next year. So we really want the community to come forward and grasp these opportunities. We want to work with our local schools. We want school kids thinking, I want a career in health, and knowing that there are so many different jobs available that you can do and have a career in our wonderful public health system. I do want to acknowledge the great work that is done by our existing health staff, and I know they cannot wait to see us supplementing this workforce by over 30% increase in the existing workforce here at this site alone. That is an incredible uplift in staff, and we know that our $10 billion of capital investment that we are rolling out over the next 6 years is not possible without the staff to make all of those facilities operational. So our workforce has to come first. We need to make sure that we've got the staff so that these facilities can be fully optimised going forward. So I do want to acknowledge Metro South Hospital and Health Service, the great work they've done to put this fair on. I know other hospital and health services are watching with keen interest about how well today goes and are considering doing similar things themselves. So it's a great initiative. I can't wait to see the community pouring through here. The fair is on till 1 o'clock today, and I'll now hand over to Shannon and Linus to just talk about a little bit more how great this is for their local community. Shannon.
Thank you so much, Yvette, and I'm so proud that our government has recognised that Logan is one of the fastest growing regions, and that's why we have more than $1 billion being invested right here. Hundreds more beds, a brand new maternity ward. But what this means for young kids in high school right now is the opportunity for a fantastic career in health. Everything from a midwife to a wardie to a nurse to preparing food that keeps everyone very well fed. Here at the Logan Hospital, there are so many opportunities. We know that our local high schools have wonderful programs in place for health training, but the partnerships that can be created here to make sure that young people have a rewarding career in health is so exciting. 1,500 new jobs. I'm so excited that so many people want to be part of today and learn more about how they can have a rewarding career here in Logan. My message to our community is that Logan needs you. So please come along today and find out what job might be right for you or your children.
Thanks. One of the things that's really great to have Yvette here, because Yvette really understands a growing area like Logan, because she comes from the sort of parallel on the north side. That's why she's so passionate about this construction going on at the Logan Hospital. And that new construction, new beds, and the new wards are going in behind us, that means new jobs for Logan as well. So there's over a 30% increase in the workforce on this site, and that means all sorts of jobs. So we all know about doctors and nurses, but there's wardies, there's people doing the air conditioning and the lifts, all of the different services that are around through to cleaning. We just spoke to Elizabeth and Robin, who worked here over 30 years in a variety of jobs that they've found incredibly rewarding, giving back to the Logan Hospital. So it's exciting to be part of this government that really understands growing areas and really invests in them. We see that investment going on right now. We also see the investment in people that are so vital to this. So that's why I say to any mums and dads and young people or any job seekers out there, come down here today. You don't need to be registered. Come down and check out an exciting job that could be your future.
And I do want to add, having visited some of these stalls already this morning, that it's not just the 1,500 jobs on offer, but we have a volunteer stand. And
right.
if you want to volunteer and give back to the community, and I can assure you that you will get as much out of volunteering at a hospital as you give. And our volunteers are part of the lifeblood of our healthcare services, and so if you're interested in volunteering, come down and have a chat with the volunteers that are here today as well. Happy to take questions.
Are you going to be looking overseas to fill some of these jobs as well, in a similar way to the way that the QPS is doing at the moment?
So we will always continue with our pipeline of promoting health jobs overseas. We have to supplement our existing workforce, particularly our doctors, nurses, midwives and specialists, with overseas trained professionals as well. So we will continue to do that and try to attract people from overseas. But also importantly, what we need to be doing is growing our own. And there's nothing better than growing your own in your own community, not just making sure that we're attracting people from around Australia and around Queensland, but as Shannon and Linus have said, attracting people from Logan and this region, because there's nothing like living and working in the same community, and they're much more likely to call this their career and to stay here for many years. So that's the work we're doing as well. How do we reach into our local schools and say to our kids in grades 10, 11 and 12, now have you thought about a career in health? Have you thought about working at your local hospitals? And take up that opportunity now.
How many job vacancies are there in Queensland Health across the state?
I'll have to get you the figure. What I do know, obviously that fluctuates a lot, and it fluctuates across different occupations, even with the people retiring, and we are seeing obviously aging population, and that includes an aging workforce, so people retiring, but we are still seeing net increases. So we had a net increase of doctors this year, which is a great thing. That's what we need, because we're putting on additional frontline staff. So happy to get you the total vacancy rate, but those are managed very much at individual HHS levels. So what I do know is that we need to do everything to fill those positions. We also have industrial relations arrangements in place across our public hospital system that transitions people from casual to permanent jobs, and I want to see that happening at the first opportunity, because if people have worked with us for a couple of years as casuals, they've proven themselves and we've got vacancies, we should be moving them into permanent jobs.
There aren't a lot of job vacancies. Is a career fair a last-ditch attempt to try?
No, not at all. It's a sensible attempt. It's about actually saying to this local community, do you know the types of jobs available? Because when people hear about hospitals and healthcare, they think doctors and nurses, and there are so many different occupations. I was just talking to the environmental services team. They do all the cleaning. They were absolutely critical in keeping us safe during COVID. What they do each and every day, keeping our theatres clean, our wards clean, is essential. Otherwise you end up with serious infections and so forth. So it was because of them, behind the scenes, what they did, which helped us contain COVID as well. So there are exciting jobs out there, and we just want to lift the awareness of all those other jobs that are available and say they're here now. 1,500 extra positions this year and next year. That is an incredible opportunity for this region.
How many
Can
of
I
those
answer
1,500
that from a
doctors and
local
nurses?
perspective?
Sorry, I
sorry,
take
go
that one. Sorry.
How many of those 1,500 are doctors and nurses?
So I have the breakdown, 150 doctors, over 500 nurses, over 140 allied health professionals, but of course we'll have administration, cleaners, wardies, food services and security positions all available. Linus, I might just let you...
Look, for us, this is something we've called for because we're excited about connecting Logan residents with the jobs that are here. You see this very TV interviews being interrupted by the beeping of construction workers because works are going on right now building new wards. We want to connect locals with local jobs. So that's fantastic to have this, and I really appreciate the initiative because we want to get Logan locals into the exciting world of this new expanded hospital.
Minister, there's certain health wait lists that are growing, and you're
Yes.
the general noted of that in
Yes.
this report this week. What concerns you the most at the moment in terms of those waiting lists? Is it elective surgery, waiting for specialist outpatients? What is the government doing?
So of course we want to see our wait times come down, both for outpatients and for planned care. We want to see, our ED presentation times are, the highest or the best in the country. So we're leading the way and actually are better than what they were when the LNP were in government, despite the pressures and the increase in presentations through our EDs. But we do want to see lost time go down. We want to see, more ambulance back on the roads quicker. All of those things are important. We are seeing improvements in a lot of those areas from last quarter to this quarter. Every hospital is managing COVID through each wave better. And learning how to adapt to that. But we do have to remember we've got between 500 and 600 beds on any given day taken up with long stay patients who are elderly and who have disability. We still are at the moment between 200 and 300 hospital beds with COVID. Almost between 200 and 300. So we've seen those numbers coming up again in the last 2 weeks. That's okay. We're learning to live with that. But that means more beds offline and available for planned care and emergency care. We see with the expansion of our hospitals, more models of minor injury clinics being established in our hospitals, but also in our satellite hospitals. We're seeing innovative practices come in, more virtual emergency department, more hospital in the home. All of these things are helping. Nurse navigators have diverted people away from hospitals and significantly reduced readmissions. So we are seeing improvements with all of these initiatives. And while we talk about, and the auditor's report did not show us anything that we didn't already know and isn't already publicly available. Our performance data is out there. We know these lists are growing. We know that we have had a once in a lifetime significant disruption to our health system. We always have had growth and demand, but we've never had, in our generation, our lifetimes, we've never had this sort of disruption in a health system where they have had to continually suspend elective surgery. But we are seeing an increase. So we've seen a 6% increase in the amount of surgery that we've done. The point I want to make though is you can't go too fast. We did that after 2020 when there was a national decision to suspend elective surgery. We came out of 2020, we fast-tracked elective surgery, and we got our numbers back to, almost pre-COVID numbers. Our staff did exceptionally well, but when you fill every bed with elective surgery, it means you're taking away bed capacity for emergency. And when you do that, and when 1 in 3 people walking into ED and coming in by ambulance need actually to be admitted to a bed, then that's where you get blockages in ED, you get blockages with ramping. That's what's causing it. So you've got to be careful to make sure you're still keeping those beds available for emergency care as well as elective. So I think we're doing it in a much more safe, sensible way. We are seeing gradual improvement. We're partnering with the private sector through Surgery Connect. We've got a lot of private hospitals taking public patients and partnering with us to help us get those lists down.
We're also seeing an increase in the number of Category 1 and Category 2 patients.
Absolutely, yeah.
Is that indicative that people are maybe not going to their doctor in time?
It is absolutely indicative of a failing primary care system in this country. It is absolutely indicative of that. Access to GPs is less affordable and less accessible than it's ever been before. And if you cannot get into a GP, and when you get to a GP, you can't get that holistic care because the way the system is set up, that it's just churn and seeing as many patients as possible each day, then they're not getting that holistic care that they need, which means that you don't get to spend that hour with that patient, which might mean they don't end up in an ED and they don't end up in a hospital. You're seeing them in 15 minutes and you're seeing them possibly more frequently or not at all, and end up chronically ill.
What concrete plans have been put in place following the maternity forum this week to get urgently needed staff to
Well,
regional hospitals?
considering it happened 24 hours ago, I don't think you could say there's concrete plans that come out of that forum yet. Those details are all being collated. Those ideas are coming together. I was very pleased to sit in the first session of that forum, heard a lot of great ideas. There is a lot of recognition, and there's a lot of health peak bodies who did say to me, we don't know what the solution is. They acknowledge themselves, we don't know how we can fix this quickly, because, you know, there's less people wanting to become GPs. There's less people wanting to become obstetricians. And even when they are, we need like 1.3 doctors to when we used to have one, because they don't want to work 7 days a week anymore. They want a more flexible balance in their life, and that means we need more doctors to do the same job as that was being done a couple of decades ago. So there was a lot of good ideas, and I really look forward to my department coming back to me about what can we do to put in place concrete measures, both in the short term but in the medium to long term as well. And that includes talking to the Commonwealth about more places for doctors, more medical placements at our universities, making sure we've got a better streamline into our hospitals for those intern doctors and during their training. It also means that we need to talk to the colleges about accreditation and how do we streamline that accreditation. That was one of the things I heard the other day, that extra requirements have been put on GP obstetricians to actually be qualified. And there was questions in the room, was that necessary for the purpose of actually having them accredited and on the job? So it was an honest, frank, open discussion with a whole lot of health professionals that I hope will push us through some of those silos and those barriers that are happening out there right now.
There's a report in The Australian today that the federal government refused to pay for the Gabba redevelopment because of unexplained cost blowouts. Is that true?
Well, I wasn't directly involved in any of those discussions, so you'd have to put that question to the Commonwealth.
Minister, just on another matter, maybe it's more of a question for the Attorney General. Following the Commission of Inquiry into DNA testing, I believe an independent board was being established.
That's right.
I think you said at the time that we essentially need to rebuild it from the ground up.
Yes.
Is there any updates on
Yes, so Chad and I just met with our co-chairs very recently, and the board will be meeting this month. And there's a lot of work they have already done. So Walter Sofronoff was able to, and Julie Dick were able to run us through an extensive list of initiatives that have already been put in place with the new chief executive there, and the work they're going to be doing. But yeah, that board will be hitting the ground running this month, and I'm pleased. I want to thank them for taking on this role. I think it is really important to give the public confidence in the services that we provide, and to see the evolution of our services. I have no doubt that due to the light being shone on these services, we will not only be nation leading, but we'll be world leading once we finish this process. But there is a lot of work to be done. There's cultural change within the organisation that the chief executive's working very hard on, and there's a lot of practices that have to be changed, including changes to equipment and processes that are used. So all of those discussions are going on right now.
And are those Queensland health staff that were named during the Commission of Inquiry, and I believe was still decided at the time, are they still working?
So they are still on suspension at the current time. Yeah, I understand that they're going through the process. They sought extensions, and they are still on suspension and not in the current workplace.
Will the government introduce new legislation to make the unlawful attempted disposal of public records an offence?
Well, that's already been on reported today that we are. So it's there. We've said we're committed to those recommendations, and that's what we're doing.
So why are you making that change?
Because it was recommended out of the inquiry into the legislation. We said we'd adopt those recommendations. So hopefully the LNP will adopt it, because they had a practice of destroying records when they were in government. So I'm hoping when the legislation comes before Parliament that they'll be willing to support it.
And are those changes in direct response to Mark Bailey's mango cubes?
No,
the LNP asserts?
It was a direct response to the review of the legislation and modernising the legislation.
Minister, or perhaps Mr. Power, can talk about youth crime and travelling around the committee. committee question. Could you?
Sure.
What did you hear during the committee hearings? Was there anything that alarmed you about this legislation, and will there be amendments recommended?
I want to reserve that for the committee to make their deliberations in their report. But I can comment that we went to both Cairns and Townsville and then heard extensively from people in Brisbane and Toowoomba, and we're still open to people submitting things on the Economics and Governance website, egc at parliament.qld.gov.au, so if any feedback's still there. We heard from a lot of people, both experts in the treatment and family services. We heard from people on the ground who had actually been affected by crime. So this has been a really good process informing the committee. And I don't want to necessarily second guess that, because we want to have a full conversation with the entire committee about those things. But we did see some broad support for this, for targeting those that are serious repeat offenders. And that's certainly a theme that came through. And that's what this legislation has some focus on.
In your experience, is there enough time for this committee process to happen effectively?
Well, obviously the LNP said that we should be passing it without a committee. I found that it was useful to go to and do that travel through Cairns and Townsville, but also to get the reports from, we've had I think over 70 different submissions. I found that it was useful to have that, and that process has been something where it's not, I guess this has been over a year where we've been working on this together, doing lots of listening, lots of feedback. And this caps that off to be able to give people that process. So I do think it was useful.
Robbie Catter would have liked you to have gone to Mount Isa. Was that being considered at all?
It was. We were actually willing to travel anywhere we'd got submissions from to listen to people. We are still open and welcome to any submissions from Mount Isa. As of the Townsville hearings that we made, we hadn't yet received any from Mount Isa, but we're really passionate to receive any from there. We also had the member for Traeger, Robbie Catter. He wrote to us asking to participate in Townsville, but at that point he hadn't yet written to the committee saying that he wanted them to travel to Mount Isa. But we're very, very welcome to receive anything from Mount Isa. We know Mount Isa has issues. This is a government that listens, and certainly a committee that listens, and we're really passionate about continuing to do that.
Just a question for the AG, please. A former detective today says mandatory detention for kids should be introduced if they're charged with serious offences 3 times in a 6-month period. Would you support this?
Well, the evidence that we've seen through our Sentencing Advisory Council, which is a body that we reintroduced after the LNP cut that body, is that mandatory detention isn't the most effective deterrent. But what we've got in our bill, of course, for the first time, we can have a declaration that a young person is a serious repeat offender, and that then gives the court more options and more intervention for how to deal with these serious repeat offenders. So I think, you know, we've been having this conversation, as Linus has said now, for many, many months. We know there is a small cohort of young people who are overwhelmingly responsible for the majority of crime that we are seeing, and we have to have effective interventions for those serious repeat offenders. We know that if the best way to keep the community safe is to prevent these young people from ending up in the youth justice system. We know that some of our intensive programs are working. Intensive case management, where you work really closely with the family, is seeing a 50% reduction in reoffending. Like, that's how you keep the community safe. So we'll continue to work with experts like our Sentencing Advisory Council on what is the most effective way to keep the community safe. And I do believe our bill has that balance right between treating those serious repeat offenders differently and making sure there are more options to intervene and more options for the court to keep the community safe.
So this has been going on for many months. Surely if some of these young serious offenders are put in a period of imprisonment for just 3 months, that's a small price for them to pay.
But many of these young offenders are getting detention orders and are spending time in detention. But what we want to be able to do is make sure that we can, really intervene as early as we can. If the court declares these young people a serious repeat offender, then there will be more options available to make sure that we are dealing with this small cohort of serious repeat offenders. And as I've said, we know, evidence tells us the best way to prevent crime from happening is to intervene earlier with these families so these kids stay in school, get a job, contribute to society, don't end up in the youth justice system. We know the community wants consequences for criminal behaviour. That's absolutely what we're doing with this bill. But the community also knows that prevention and early intervention is the best way to make sure the community is safe. And that's why we have that balance right.
Do you think it's a totally unreasonable suggestion?
No, I don't think anything's an unreasonable suggestion. As Linus has said, we want to have a really good conversation about this very complex issue that is playing out in our communities. These young people come from families who are experiencing domestic and family violence, drug and alcohol abuse, huge mental health issues. That's not something that's easily solved. That's why we need to have a conversation. We do need to be investing in early intervention and prevention, but also make sure there are consequences. Doing that together will keep the community safe.
Attorney General, a number of submissions after the bill were, I guess, raised concerns that the current overcrowding in youth detention is leading to kids in watch houses and that this might escalate that even further. Do you have any concerns about that?
I don't think any of us want to see kids in watch houses. They are not designed for young people, but at the moment we do have capacity issues, and I know that the Youth Justice Minister is working very closely with all of our colleagues to make sure there are options to get young people out of watch houses before courts quickly. That investment in our fast-track sentencing pilot is all about getting kids off remand, getting them sentenced and getting them to the appropriate place where they can get access to rehabilitation programs. So that's what we're working on.
Have you changed your mind about breach of bail being a good idea?
Well, as you know, when I was often talking about breach of bail, I was talking about the version of breach of bail that the LNP had that was incredibly flawed. You had to commit an offence whilst on bail. It wasn't breach of bail like we have for adults. I think if we can intervene earlier, so if these young people aren't meeting their bail conditions, that means they need extra support. So if they can come back before the court and we can get them that support so that they either meet their bail conditions or they go on remand, I think that's a good intervention to keep the community safe.
So the changes to the drug laws that have been announced, was that a concession from the left side of the Labor Party to the right side of the
No, the Labor Party has been talking about drug diversion and pill testing for many, many years, and I think it is a fantastic announcement. We've seen recommendations by the Productivity Commission, recommendations from many reports that say low-level personal drug users shouldn't be coming and clogging up the criminal justice system. What they need is a health response, and that's what we've done.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
That was a long one.
Take the paper clip off now.